Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Able Voices podcast. I'm Dr. Rhoda Bernard, founding managing director of the Berklee Institute for Accessible Arts Education and the assistant chair of the music education department at Berklee College of Music. And I am proud to present this podcast featuring disabled artists and arts educators. We are inviting artists with disabilities to be guest hosts for the Able Voices podcast. Today, you'll meet our next guest host, John Bramblitt. John Bramblitt is an American painter and is also blind. He was the first blind muralist in the world, with murals in both New York and Dallas, known for his bright colors and a style that mixes impressionism with the modern feel of pop art. John is also the author of the award-winning book, Shouting in the Dark. He has appeared on the CBS Evening News with Katie Couric, ABC, Fox, Discovery Channel, and BBC Radio and TV, to name a few outlets. And he's been featured in the New York Times and Psychology Today, as well as designed the artwork for numerous magazine covers and even for major film productions. John is the subject of the award-winning documentary shorts Line of Sight and Bramblitt. His art has gone to over 120 countries around the world, and he is known for his interactive speaking events, lectures, and free art workshops where everyone paints together, no matter their ability or disability. Welcome, John. We are delighted to have you as our next guest host of the Able Voices podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. This is going to be so much fun.
I think it's going to be a blast. I'd like to start off by asking you to tell us your story as an artist. How did you get your start as an artist, and how did you get to where you are today?
I think I got started the same way that a lot of artists do. I've got a weird brain, and somehow I think I could draw before I could walk. So I always did art. It was my way of understanding things. But growing up, though, I was sick a lot as a child. I was born with epilepsy, and I had kidney problems. I had a kidney out before I was 7, but I always had art. And so if I was having a bad day, I had art. If I was having a good day, I had art. And art's a brilliant way. If you're having a bad day, it's a brilliant way to deal with it. And if you're having a good day, art's a great way to celebrate it. So I did art every day, and I was in and out of hospitals a lot as a child. But but that really it drove me into my art, though, because whenever you're drawing, you're not thinking about anything. You're focusing on the tip of that pencil or the graphite or the charcoal or whatever it is you're doing, and you're not thinking about anything else. And I was always a huge nerd growing up, so I read every book I could about art. If I was around an artist, I would bug that artist until they taught me something. And they're like, "Okay, kid, here, I'll show you this. No, leave me alone for a bit." But by the time that I graduated high school, I could draw the blueprints for a house. I did cartooning. I did portrait work, and just anything drawing. I didn't think I'd be a good painter. And I didn't have the courage at that point to try something I didn't think I'd be good at. But I drew and I drew. And then in college, I ended up losing my eyesight, and I thought I'd lost art forever. I thought it was just gone. But you start learning how to do everything in new ways, and how to read, how to write. I was an English major, so I was functionally illiterate there for a little bit while I was taking these English classes, which was interesting, getting a lot of incompletes for a while. But you learn how to do everything in different ways, and I started to learn how to travel using a white cane. And I thought, well, my goodness, the same way that you navigate a city or a room, you use these lines, like you have a sidewalk that you're walking down. It's one line that's crossing another line. I thought that is so much like drawing. And I thought, well, maybe there's a way to do this. And I was so angry. I was so depressed. I was learning Braille. I was learning screen readers. I was learning orientation, mobility, all these things that you need to learn when you lose your eyesight. But yet on the inside, I was just hopeless. And art had always been my way of dealing with that. So I started to use these new techniques of being able to navigate, how to get around, and I started coming up with ways to draw where you could use your sense of touch, where I had lines that I could touch and feel. And that's kind of where that started. And I didn't know of any other blind painters in the world. There was one guy in Turkey. We didn't know each other at that point. There was probably other people, but we didn't, we didn't know about each other. So we were all kind of left to our own devices. So just sort of kind of come up with my own ways. And that's how it started, at least.
So I want to ask a couple questions. It's an incredible story. When you say that you taught yourself how to paint or how to draw again using drawings that you could feel, were you using like puffy ink? How did this work in terms of materials?
That's a good question, because at first I thought I was out of my mind. There wasn't really blind artists, so I was pretty sure that I was crazy trying to do this. But I thought, well, what do I have to lose? So I would go to the stores and I would collect everything that had a thickness to it, like resins, glues, epoxies,
Ah,
just all these different things. And then I found oil paints, and I started drawing with oil paints because they could be thick. They take forever to dry though. And then I found fabric paints, and those were great because I left a nice hard raised line and they dried faster, and I could heat them up and make them dry even faster. Now today, like I have paints that I mix myself that dry almost instantly. And but starting out though, it was just like a million failures, then you get one little success, then you get a million other failures, and
wow.
just trying different things. But that's the fun of art though. You just find what works for you.
And how did you get from, you said when you were younger, you didn't like to paint. You got to paint as a material because of the texture you could create, but then all of a sudden you're making murals. How did that, or at least it's me, how did that connection happen?
Art finds a way. um, but it's I didn't think I would be a good painter, but suddenly I couldn't feel the pencil strokes or graphite or chalk anymore.
Yeah.
So I was drawn to paint because it was something that I could actually feel. And I couldn't see color anymore. And I was so worried that I would forget what color looked like. And so I wanted to actually be able to touch color. So I was drawn to paint for that. It gave me a tactile medium that I could work with. And I could braille on my tube. So I could write in braille, like, this is red, this is blue. So even though I couldn't see it, I would know, like, I'm touching red paint. This is
Sure.
And then I started using different additives, different mediums to mix in with the paint to make each color feel different.
Mm.
So, so that the like red would actually feel different than blue, and then that helped me. Yeah, I just started with all of this, but it gave me a way to be able to, I don't know, to start working with it. But that's why I started painting though, because it kind of forced me into it, and thank goodness it did.
Wow, that's pretty incredible. So you've touched on this a little bit, but let's focus on it in its own question. Can you talk with us a little bit about your experiences as a person with a disability? You mentioned your childhood experiences and what happened with your vision, but just more about that in your life.
Yeah, I was really fortunate growing up because I had incredible friends and family around me that never treated me like I was different.
Mm.
I always had epilepsy, I had kidney problems, I had all this, and then later on, of course, the vision problems. But nobody ever treated me like I was different. And of course, I had art. And one of the things that I notice is that often, whenever people talk about disability, they focus on the limitations. What a person can't do. What physical or cognitive restrictions they have. But art gave me a different way of thinking about that. Because the wonderful thing about art is that it's all about what you can do. Like you have a goal, like, let's say you want to draw a flower. So you start making choices. If you're left-handed, you're going to grab the pencil with your left hand. That's your first choice. You start making these little tiny choices that you don't even think about. If I was going to draw a flower, I would grab a paint that I can touch and feel, something that's tactile. And I would use my hands to do the work that most people's eyes do. I can feel the lines. I can feel where I am. I can feel everywhere I've been, which is most of the work that people's eyes do. So you just find out what actually works for you. And the wonderful thing about it is that what you can't do, it doesn't even matter. You use the tools in your toolbox to get the job done. And it's the same thing in life too. You have something that you want to accomplish, you have something that you want to do. The things that you can't do, you don't even think about those really. You have a goal, you have something that you want to reach. You start working towards it. You start figuring out ways that work for you to be able to achieve that. And I love art for that. Art has taught me so many different lessons, but one of the biggest ones is that to just believe in yourself and to start working with what you have and to not accept any limitations that are imposed on you.
That is incredibly eloquent, and I love the connections you're drawing there. Drawing, you're always drawing in
You're
some way
so
or
kind, by the way.
another. But the connection that you're drawing there between making art and doing that, bringing all the tools you have and using them, and not as you're making the art, you're not saying, gosh, I wish I had this tool, because you're focused on what you can create with the tools that you've got, and what you're going to say with that. And similarly, I agree with you, that perspective in life for all of us, focusing on what we can bring to situations and what we can make happen and what we want to do rather than thinking about the negative. I really appreciate that perspective. Sounds like your family has been an incredible source of support.
Oh my goodness, they have. They've always been there for me, and whenever I lost my eyesight, I thought my life was over. I couldn't see a future. And since then, I've met my incredible wife. And people say that I have an imagination because I'm an artist, but she decided to marry a blind painter. So how much of it? So she has an incredible amount of imagination. But and an incredible son, my son Jack, he just turned 16, and it's just I don't know even my life is more colorful, and I'm happier now than I've ever been in my entire life, sighted or not.
What a beautiful way to put it, and a beautiful way to describe your life as colorful. I love that. So I know that our listeners are going to be interested in how you learned how to do this, the arts education that you had. So, how did you learn how to draw and paint and all of these things that you do?
Most of my art education was, well, actually all of it, except for one thing, but I'll save that for the end. But it was really up through high school because ended up losing my eyesight after high school, and when I did, the idea of a visually impaired visual artist wasn't really a concept.
Mm.
So I talked to artists and all that up till then, and I took every class, I read every book that I could up through high school. But then after that, though, there wasn't really anything that I could do. There were books on in Braille on how to paint. It just
Huh.
wasn't something that anybody ever thought that that was blind would want to know. And that's one thing that's changed is now, like, with access to the screen readers, we have access to all kinds of information. Before that, if you were visually impaired, the only thing you could read was what other people thought you might want to read, and they would make it into a Braille format for you. So just imagine that limitation. You have other people that are deciding what you have access to, not in
Mm.
a mean way, but just, it's just the way it was. And so the way I learned really after that was I went to college, and my major was in creative writing and literature. And I ended up getting a creative writing degree and a lit degree and a disability studies degree because I was in school forever. So for it, getting all these incompletes while I was dealing with all this other stuff. But I went to an incredible school, and even though I wasn't going for drawing and painting, I could go talk to the professors, I could talk to the students, and I could read the same books, and I could explore. And of course, with the internet, I was able to do that. But it's funny though, I did try to go and get an art degree after I got my bachelor's. So this is a weird little story. But
Okay.
so I applied to graduate school to get an MFA, and I sent in my application, and my application was really good. It was amazing. By that time, I'd been out of college maybe a year or two, but I'd worked with the Guggenheim, I've worked with the Met, I'd had dozens of solo shows. I had done all this sort of, all this fun stuff that I thought it was just a lot of fun. Worked with all these different charities, and I sent in my resume, and I talked to the lady on the phone, and she was so excited. She's like, "Yes, come on in." And so I went in there, and then I walked into her office, with my white cane, and it was just you could hear crickets. She did not know what to do. Bless her heart. I felt so bad for her, but it was just like she was like, "Oh my gosh," and the funny thing though is that, because she has worked at at the university, you can see everybody's resume, and I think mine was probably better than hers at that point. And I say that because whenever I left, she was like, she was like, "Oh, I hope you keep with your hobby, and I hope it can help you, as a hobby and all." And I've been working as a professional artist already for a couple of years, and I thought, well, maybe an MFA isn't right for me right now, and but it understruck to me the struggle that people have, you know, that want to get a higher education and have a disability, and if they want to pursue the arts. And I know one day I want to go back. I want to go back now, and there are people that are getting MFAs that have visual impairments, And
Yep.
it's just incredible. And I'm so ecstatic every time I meet someone that's doing that. One of these days, I want to do that. I don't really have time. Maybe a university will give me an honorary degree one day, and I'll ease into it in the back, going through a back door. But but it's incredible, and it's amazing how things have changed, like in the last 20, 25 years, and it's just incredible. But there's so many people out there that are pioneers, that are making their voices heard, that they're out there, they're working in education, they're making sure that people who want to aspire, they want to dream, they want to lead the career that they have always dreamed about, they're actually helping them achieve it. And I just think that's incredible.
That's amazing. Great story, too. You're doing just fine without an MFA. Great if you want one, but you're doing just fine without that degree, as far as I can tell. What advice, what advice would you give to an artist with a disability?
Well, the first thing for any artist, if you want to be rich, art may not be the career for you. People create art because they have to. I think it's like a compulsion.
Yeah.
It's a healthy mental dysfunction. I think it's one that compels you to spend your time doodling and playing around with paints and stuff instead of learning accounting or business management or something like that. And something that could really make money. But I make fun, and but really, if you want a career in the arts, it's because there's something that really drives you. There's something that makes you want to communicate with other people. And very often it's people with disabilities, because who has more to say than someone that has a disability, someone that's been separated from their society in one way or another, and that's where the best art comes from, you know? And I don't want to make it seem bleak, like, oh, you're always going to be in poverty. There are ways to make money and to make a living in art. And I know, like I mentioned earlier, I'm happier than I've ever been in. I'll never be like like Bill Gates or something. I'll never be a billionaire, but I'm supremely happy, and I look forward to every day that I can create. So I think if it's something that you want to do because it brings you joy in life, I say pursue it. And also I say to be okay with failure, because I mean that's something that art teaches you as well. Like, you need to be able to fall down. In my career, I've been really fortunate to work with some successful people, some very well-known actors and musicians and politicians and directors. And whenever I get around somebody that I admire like that either they're great people and they found success in their career, I ask them, well, what is the secret of your success? And the crazy thing is that I almost always hear the same thing. They always say you have to be okay with failing. You have to be able to fall down. You have to be able to put yourself down there and make a mistake and then just brush it off and say, okay, well, I learned from that. I know what not to do. And then just instantly move forward. And with art, that's so much the same way. If you're making a drawing, what people see at the end of the drawing or the painting is the finished result of it. They don't see the thousand misstrokes that you made. White paint is my best friend. I'm always correcting mistakes. And but every time I make a brush stroke that's wrong, it's pushing me towards where it needs to be. It's letting me know where that stroke actually needs to be. And it's the same way in life. So to young artists, I say go out there and do it. And it's going to take some time, and be okay with having some failure. You need to fail a little bit to move forward.
I agree. One of the things that struck me about your answer and that I thought was really powerful is that you essentially were saying that when you're an artist, it's not just what you do, it's who you are. So when you're driven and drawn to that, I keep talking about being drawn and drawing. It's got to be because I'm talking to you. But when you're driven to create or drawn to the arts as more than just a hobby, right? It's because it's something that's a part of who you are.
That's so true. It's funny whenever you ask somebody what they do for a living, and if they'll say, "Oh, I'm a photographer," or "I'm a musician," and then and they'll say, "Oh, but I work at an accounting firm or something after, or I'm a barista or something like that." But who they truly are, though, is this artist. That's what they are, and they do the other to make money, to make ends meet if they need to. And that's one of the wonderful thing about artists, though, is that they are the dreamers. It's the people that actually have the ideas that are pushing us forward. And especially when it comes to disability, it's people that are making a voice to be heard. And if you look at the history of disability, you see all this movement and all this growth. Everything that I'm able to do today is because I'm standing on the shoulders of people that were so brave and had so much courage, and they were able to put their voices out there. They were able
Yes.
to talk in a time when people didn't want to listen. And I'm so
Mm-mm.
fortunate that I can make art now, and it's a much different environment. And hopefully, we keep pushing forward. We keep having these courageous people, and I think we will.
I think you're one of them. So
Oh,
there
you're
you
so
go.
kind.
Last question for you. I know our listeners would love to hear about what you are working on today. So, what are some of your current projects?
Oh, I just finished a mural in Korea and one in California. In a few days, I'm leaving for Oklahoma, which is much less far away. And I'm going to be doing a mural there. And I opened a gallery, and it's an art making space too. And it's a place that's all inclusive. So anybody with any difference, any ability can come there and make art. And so I spend a lot of time there just painting. And I do a lot of time working with charities and nonprofits where I travel around and I talk and I paint live, and we'll try to auction off my paintings to raise money for that charity.
Oh, that's
And
fantastic.
oh my goodness, it is the most fun. I meet the best people. It's just so incredibly rewarding. I I don't know. It's hard to put into words, but I'm so happy that I'm able to do what I love, and I'm able to do it around people that I love. And that's really the big reason I opened the gallery. Was I have a studio that I paint at that it's attached to my home, but nobody ever wanders in there hardly, But at the gallery, I paint live there, and people wander in, and I get to meet people, and I get to hear their stories and what drives them and why they're making art and why they're drawn to art. And it's just like, oh my goodness, it's just like throwing fuel on the fire. It's just so wonderful.
That's incredible because you're right. I mean, in a lot of cases, artistic creation happens alone. Not, I mean, if you're in a play, right, you're working with other people. If you're part of a band, it's a mix. You're in the woodshed by yourself, but you're also, of course, playing with other people in a band. But in your case, right, a lot of the work is solitary. So having these opportunities to be around other people, I can imagine would be really exciting.
It is. I was alone plenty during COVID. I'm ready to be around the arts. And you're right about the musicians. I'm always so jealous of musicians because they'll perform the art and they get that instant feedback from the crowd. And you know, how rare is it for a painter to be painting and you have somebody applause when you do that brushstroke just so. But
That's
it's
true.
so nice to be in a space though where people are coming in and they're making art, and
I
it
think that's
is. It's
fantastic. Well, I want to thank you, John, for taking the time to speak with us today. And we're really looking forward to the upcoming episodes where you will be our guest host.
I am looking forward to that so much. Oh my goodness, it's going to be so much fun. And thank you so much for having me on here today. This has been so much fun chatting with you.
Same here. Thank you so much. Able Voices is a production of the Berkeley Institute for Accessible Arts Education, led by me, Dr. Rhoda Bernard, the founding managing director. It is produced by Daniel Martinez del Campo. The intro music is by Kai Levin, and our closing song is by Sebastian Batista. Kai and Sebastian are students in the arts education programs at the Berkeley Institute for Accessible Arts Education. If you would like to learn more about our work, find us online at berkeley.edu/BIAAE or email us at BIAAE@berkeley, that's LEE.edu.